At 0-2 down against your biggest rivals, watching them celebrate a La Liga title on their home turf while your own season crumbles into dust, you expect anger. You expect a reaction. You expect the players wearing that legendary white shirt to show even a fraction of the fight that built the Kings of Europe myth. But Kylian Mbappé? He just took out his phone. While Real Madrid was being systematically dismantled at the new camp, while the dressing room was reportedly fracturing into physical violence, and while the fans were reaching a breaking point not seen in a decade, the man who was supposed to be the savior of this era was busy on Instagram. The media will spend the next week talking about Xabi Alonso's high line. They will analyze the midfield transition or the lack of defensive cover. But that is not the real story of this El Clásico. The scoreline is just a symptom. The real story, the one that explains why Real Madrid is currently a hollowed-out giant, isn't about football anymore. It's about entitlement. It's about a culture where the brand of the individual has finally, catastrophically, overtaken the value of the badge. To understand how we got here, we have to look back at the last 24 months. For 2 seasons now, the trophy cabinet at the Bernabéu has remained largely empty, save for a Super Cup that feels like a lifetime ago. This wasn't the plan. When Mbappé finally arrived, it was supposed to be the completion of the Galacticos 3 project. It was supposed to be a decade of dominance. Instead, it has been a decade's worth of drama compressed into 2 years of dysfunction. Going into this match, the tension was already at a boiling point. The rumors were already swirling that Mbappé's injury wasn't a physical ailment, but a strategic withdrawal, a superstar preserving himself for a World Cup while his club teammates fought a losing battle. It's a narrative that sounds cynical, but in the modern era of player power, it's a narrative that has become increasingly believable. Then, the match started. And for 90 minutes, Real Madrid looked like a team of strangers. There was no cohesion, no spirit, and most damningly, no leadership. With Dani Carvajal and Federico Valverde out, the captain's armband fell to Vinicius Jr. by default. It was a test of character for a player who has often been criticized for his temperament. He failed that test within 30 minutes. While Barcelona played with the hunger of a team that deserved the title, the captain of Real Madrid was seen walking, not running, not pressing, just walking, as early as the first half hour. But the true revealing moment didn't happen on the grass. It happened on a screen, as the second goal went in. As Barcelona fans began their chants of Campeones, Kylian Mbappé posted a story, a screenshot of his television. At first glance, it looked like a show of support. It had the words Hala Madrid emblazoned across it. But for those who know how Mbappé operates, for those who remember his history of calculated social media accidents, this was something else entirely. The fans noticed it immediately. The timing, the framing, the message hidden in plain sight. Because when you are the face of a project that is failing, when you are the most expensive piece of a puzzle that doesn't fit, every post is a political act. That is not a gesture of solidarity. That is a declaration of distance. And in the next 20 minutes, we are going to dissect exactly why that single photo might be the final nail in the coffin for the current Real Madrid hierarchy. Let's examine the piece of evidence that has the entire Real Madrid fanbase spiraling. In the middle of the match, while Barcelona was systematically tearing through Xabi Alonso's defensive structure, Kylian Mbappé uploaded a story to his millions of Instagram followers. It was a simple, slightly blurry photograph of his television screen broadcasting the game. Across the bottom, typed in standard font, were 2 words. Hala Madrid. You think? Ah. The injured superstar cheering on his teammates from home. To understand why, you have to look past the text and look at the actual frame of the television broadcast he chose to capture. He did not post this before kickoff to rally the troops. He did not post this during a rare moment of Real Madrid possession. The timestamp and the on-screen action reveal a much darker narrative. At the exact millisecond Mbappé decided to snap that picture, the scoreline in the top corner read 2-0 inches favor of Barcelona. Worse still, the freeze frame caught the precise moment a Real Madrid player was dispossessed, triggering yet another lethal Barcelona counterattack. Are we really supposed to believe that one of the most media-savvy athletes in the history of global sports, a player who employs an entire team of PR specialists, accidentally posted a picture of his team's lowest, most humiliating moment of the season while slapping a cheerful Hala Madrid sticker on it? No. He knew exactly what he was doing. There is a completely valid version of this story where Mbappé is just clumsy with his phone. But if you have followed his career trajectory, you know that is the least likely scenario. Because we have seen this exact playbook before. Nobody is talking about the undeniable parallel between this moment and his tenure at Paris Saint-Germain. Cast your mind back to his time under Christophe Galtier. After a frustrating 0-0 draw against Reims, a game where Mbappé was forced to play as a lone, traditional number 9, he took to Instagram. He posted a picture of himself during the match with a single, cryptic hashtag, #PivotGang. It was a direct, public shot at Galtier's tactical system. It was Mbappé telling the world, and the PSG board, that he hated the role he was being forced into. It completely undermined the manager, forcing Galtier to spend his next press conference explaining a social media post he didn't even understand. Mbappé weaponized his following to win a tactical argument. He bypassed the manager, bypassed the dressing room, and took his grievances directly to the global court of public opinion. What we are witnessing right now with this Hala Madrid post is the exact same mechanism, deployed against a new target. Over the last few weeks, the fans have been turning on him. The Spanish press has been questioning his work rate, his fitness, and his overall commitment to the club. So, while sitting comfortably away from the slaughter at the new camp, safely insulated from the boos, he presses send on a picture that highlights his team's absolute incompetence on the pitch. The unwritten message is deafeningly loud. He isn't cheering them on. He is holding up a mirror to the club and saying, "Look at how pathetic they are without me. Look at what happens when I am not there to save you." Imagine being Jude Bellingham or Thibaut Courtois, leaving everything on the grass, suffering the ultimate humiliation against your bitterest rivals, only to walk into the dressing room, open your phone, and see your highest-paid teammate subtly turning your failure into a vindication of his own ego. It is the ultimate manifestation of modern player power. The club is burning, and the star player is using the flames for lighting. If Kylian Mbappe's Instagram story represents the digital rebellion happening outside the stadium, the disaster unfolding on the grass has a much more visceral, physical manifestation. Because while Mbappé was treating a 2-0 deficit as a public relations opportunity, another superstar was treating the Real Madrid captain's armband like an accessory. To understand the true depth of Xabi Alonso's current crisis, we have to talk about the decision to make Vinicius Jr. the captain for this El Clásico. With Dani Carvajal unavailable and Federico Valverde entirely absent from the pitch, the armband was handed to the Brazilian winger. Now, the traditional narrative in Spain is that Real Madrid awards the captaincy based strictly on seniority. The player with the longest continuous service gets the band. That is how the club operates. But nobody is talking about the devastating psychological effect this bureaucratic tradition is having on a dressing room that is crying out for actual, vocal leadership. Handing Vinicius the armband was not a tactical decision by Xabi Alonso. It was a structural obligation. And how did the newly appointed captain respond to the heaviest burden in world football? By the 30th minute, with Barcelona dominating possession and cutting through the midfield at will, Vinicius was spotted doing something that should be unthinkable for a Real Madrid captain in an El Clásico. He was walking, not jogging back into a defensive shape, not pressing the opposing center-backs, just walking. The generous reading is that he was preserving his explosive energy for a vital counterattack, attempting to stay high up the pitch to keep the Barcelona defense honest. The less generous reading, and the one that her furious fans on forums and social media are increasingly subscribing to, is that he simply did not care enough to suffer without the ball. But the absolute climax of this entitlement, the true revelation of his current mindset, didn't happen while the ball was in play. It happened after the final whistle, as the Barcelona players embraced on the pitch, officially crowned La Liga champions in the home of their eternal rivals. Vinicius turned toward a section of the celebrating away fans and raised his hands, explicitly gesturing the number 15. 15 Champions League titles. He thought he was defending the club's honor. He thought he was delivering a defiant, viral moment that would rally the Madridistas. But in reality, he was hiding behind history. When you look at the Catalan press the morning after, outlets like Mundo Deportivo did not even bother to analyze his tactical performance. They simply asked one devastating question, pointing back to his behavior earlier in the season. Remember the first El Clásico? This is the guy who threw a tantrum at Xabi Alonso when he was substituted, and today, they made him captain. You cannot demand respect for 15 European Cups trophies won by the sweat, blood, and tactical discipline of legends like Raúl, Sergio Ramos, and Karim Benzema when you completely refuse to respect the 90 minutes you are currently playing. Vinicius used the club's glorious past as a shield to deflect from his own unacceptable present. And for a manager like Xabi Alonso, who built his entire playing career on collective suffering and tactical intelligence, watching his captain behave this way must feel like a betrayal. Now, there is a completely valid version of this story, where Real Madrid is just a victim of a grueling, unforgiving schedule. The generous reading of this 2-0 collapse at the Nou Camp is that the squad is simply physically and mentally exhausted, running on fumes after 2 years of relentless pressure and constant tactical shifting under Xabi Alonso. The less generous reading, and the one that is currently being whispered by journalists in the corridors of the Bernabéu, is that the dressing room is no longer a football team, it is a war zone. Because while the television cameras were focused on Vinicius's arrogant gestures, and while the internet was dissecting Mbappe's Instagram feed, a much darker reality was reportedly unfolding behind closed doors. We are seeing leaked reports of physical altercations that go far beyond your standard, competitive training ground disagreements. There are stories of Antonio Rudiger slapping young Álvaro Carreras. And, most alarmingly, reports of a severe physical confrontation where Aurélien Tchouaméni actually threw a punch at Federico Valverde. Let's pause and really think about that last detail. Federico Valverde is widely considered the heartbeat of this current squad. He is the player most deeply connected to the traditional, hard-working Real Madrid ethos. To have a teammate throw a punch at him is not just a momentary loss of temper. That is not passion boiling over in the heat of a title race. That is a complete and utter breakdown of institutional discipline. It tells you that the unwritten hierarchy within the squad has completely collapsed. The players no longer respect the internal code, they no longer police themselves, and it appears Xabi Alonso is currently powerless to police them. And the fans can see it. You don't need a press pass to recognize a rot this deep. If you look at the major Real Madrid subreddits, or read the most upvoted comments in the digital editions of AS and Marca, the anger isn't even directed at Xabi Alonso's high line or his midfield rotation anymore. The fury is directed at the culture of the club. One supporter perfectly encapsulated the current mood. Courtois has always been dedicated to us, and at least Jude Bellingham actually tries. Even Fran Garcia plays well, despite the club constantly looking for ways to sell him. I really don't understand when our team stopped valuing players with heart, and instead started pampering guys who only have big names but no worthy contributions. The club seems to be actively alienating the workhorses, the players willing to suffer for the white shirt, in order to protect the fragile egos of superstars, who view Real Madrid as a luxury brand partnership rather than a football club. Jude Bellingham is running himself into the ground. Thibaut Courtois is facing relentless barrages of shots. And meanwhile, the supposed leaders of the team are either walking on the pitch, fighting their own teammates in the dressing room, or posting cryptic screenshots from the comfort of their living rooms. So, where does this leave Real Madrid? And more importantly, where does this leave Xabi Alonso? The Spanish manager is currently standing on the edge of an absolute abyss. You can be the greatest tactical mind of your generation. You can design the perfect pressing trigger or the most fluid midfield rotation. But you cannot coach a tactical system to a player who fundamentally refuses to track back. And you certainly cannot manage a dressing room when the internal hierarchy is dictated by global brand value and Instagram followers rather than actual performance on the grass. If the reports of physical violence of Aurélien Tchouaméni actually striking Federico Valverde are entirely accurate, then the bridge is already burned. The trust is gone. Florentino Perez is now facing the most defining decision of his modern presidency. He has to choose between two fundamentally conflicting ideologies. Does he ruthlessly back his manager, purging the dressing room of toxic egos even if it means selling the most marketable faces on the planet? Or does he do what Real Madrid has traditionally done? Sack the manager, protect the Galacticos, and hope the next coach can simply outmaneuver the player power? This is not just a transition period anymore. This is an institutional crisis. The badge is losing a war against the individual. And this is where I need to hear from you. Because looking at this entire situation, from Mbappe's calculated screenshot, to Vinicius's arrogant gestures to the total collapse of internal discipline, I have to ask you, is it time for Real Madrid to ruthlessly clear out these superstars and rebuild around players who actually want to bleed for the club? Or is Xabi Alonso simply failing to manage big egos the way Carlo Ancelotti and Zinedine Zidane did? Tell me in the comments what you actually think. Come back to this video when the summer transfer window officially opens, because this dressing room is going to explode. The current structure cannot survive the summer. Someone with massive influence is going to be forced out. If this kind of analysis is what you come here for, hit subscribe. We don't just talk about the scorelines here. We talk about the power, the psychology, and the real stories happening behind the scenes. I'll see you in the next one.